This spot was super cool too. This is where, if any of you saw, there was a video where I picked up the, they have like different size stones to see, like the Vikings used to pick up these different size stones to see like if you could essentially row the boats with them. And there is like a medium sized stone. I want to say it was like maybe 250 pounds or something like that. Then there was like a bigger stone that I want to say was like 350. And they're just like sitting there on the beach. Which is really fun. That's actually Mel and I walking. I'm kind of walking and flying the drone, you know, completely standard, responsible move. This place had some of the, like, just the craziest landscape that we'd seen since our time there, especially with like the moss and stuff. It was so green, super cool. What's going on, everybody? Let me grab the chat, pop this bad boy out. And you guys, in case you didn't know, I actually typically put you guys on the spare screen over here. Let's get locked in here and let's get ready to talk about some trading, shall we? So the markets are off to a bit of a slower pace. I would say to start is like nothing crazy. Some people I think are a little wound up right now, expecting a drop. So every down tick is being looked at as if it's this big giant. Sorry, I had to pop up my task manager. I don't know if that messes you guys up. I don't know if, you know, how much of that gets back to you all, but that's one of the biggest things I'm noticing right now. It's like every time I see some sort of market movement, it is like people seem to think that the floor is coming out and it's the end of the world kind of stuff, which I don't know. I always just find that to be a little silly, but it's also, I think people become slightly conditioned to be hyperbolic like that. So if we take a look at the broad market, I already did this on the video that I launched, the market recap video from a little bit earlier today. So I'm actually going to skip going through this process and just take a look at some of the stuff that I didn't get into during that video. If you're, you know, curious about anything about it, I just ran through like the standard sector analysis and whatnot, but you can check that video out on the channel. So here's what I'm seeing. There are still a lot of things showing a lot of strength, and there's a lot of stuff that still looks super interesting to me. So G36 says social media and financial media distorting things for clicks. That's exactly it. It's like you would think that the world is perpetually ending like over and over and over again based on what you pick up from those kinds of places for that exact thing. It's actually like straight up comical. Lance says it's not the end of the world, just Monday. Yeah. Speaking of, I was actually joking with a friend of mine. I was going through Reddit, and one of the things I like to do is track like how engaged or how active people are. And the market right now is probably at one of its lowest activity points that I've seen in some time in terms of like retail mentions and people that are a little more casual, not necessarily finding their way in like they typically would, which I find really interesting. I noticed that from the GME space as well. When GME quiets down and it's more inside days like this, that, I mean, just overall, like the ape side of the community will be a little more quiet, which is natural, right? Like if something's not going on, unless you're a market junkie, you're not necessarily going to keep looking at it. But I find that to be interesting because seeing the amount of fervor that popped out, the fact that there was like a downtick, I just thought was a little excessive. Reese says it's irritating too. Super. But the problem, you have all of your compatriots on the live stream today, all of your family members. That's who you have to thank. Because the reason why the media does that is because people click on that shit. It's exactly why. If people didn't click on it, the media wouldn't do it. So people essentially train the media to do what works. And if people didn't click on that stuff, the media would not do it, which is actually, I always find that to be pretty hilarious. Let's take a look. I actually wanted to start with this from Reddit. This person on Thinkorswim says Iron Condor pricing seems off. And then this person says, hi, everyone, this leg seems oddly priced. My portfolio is now at a loss because of it. Any idea why this is what's happening, if it will get fixed? What is this? Is this a mistake that they're highlighting here? What are they showing you? Any brave souls have a guess as to what's happening? We got Hater. What's up, Hater? Good to see you. Jimmy saying hello from Colorado. Yo, Colorado is still pretty high on our hit list. We were just looking at Boise, Idaho. That might be the next spot we end up at. But Colorado has been kind of one of the primary places we've been looking at. Back to this. Why is this happening? Giovanni from Philadelphia. I don't know the last time I've been to Philadelphia. Joey says, is this a liquidity issue? That's exactly correct. It's not necessarily a liquidity issue per se, but this is from liquidity. I actually don't know whose this is. This does look like a box spread, it doesn't it? I wasn't even really looking at it. Put, call. 58, 50. Yeah, it's a box spread. But that's all this is. So for this person here, this is literally just liquidity on this option. This is probably a strange option that doesn't have a lot of existing liquidity, showing a big loss. But if you trade box spreads, you literally will see this all the time. I remember the first time I saw this, to be completely honest, and I was like, oh shit, something has gone terribly, terribly bad. And then I looked at it more closely and I realized nothing had gone terribly, terribly bad. It's literally just liquidity. So for those that trade box spreads, you all know I trade box spreads all the time. I have actually a really solid one. One of the best ones I think I've ever filled is on right now, which I'm very proud of. I'm very stoked because I spent a lot of time trading these unsung hero of box spreads that really are a big part of how I'm able to do with the broader market, because the capital in the account is always being used. That is the beauty. That is the entire beauty of this entire structure, is what I have in the account always has something to do. And that leads to pretty significant efficiency over time. So anyways, yeah, the box spread that I have on right now is 2.6% over the risk-free rate. And that actually is, I don't know. I haven't totally been able to figure out what I think about that yet. The reason being is I think the yield curve right now has been super, super active. It's all over the place. So even today, we saw the 10-year start spiking up. Bonds have been a bit of a problem, I would actually argue. So if we go to this one and let's take a look at what do we want to look at? The 10-year yield? Something like that. So we'll do the 10-year. So you can see like these are spiking, man. The 10-year yield is up to 4.19 right now, which is, this has been an absolute rip on bonds. And that's a big reason actually why equities were down today, is because yields are starting to skyrocket again, which that doesn't look super good for equities. So we'll talk a little bit more about like positioning and stuff like that during the live stream tomorrow, because today I put on a handful of trades, but a lot of them are not based on broader themes. I actually got stopped out of the Russell trade. I had a stop set for a profit, and I'm still in the crude oil trade that I put on yesterday, but I took most of it off earlier today, and I have a little bit of a runner left on there. So yeah, it's kind of a big giant mixed bag. as far as I'm concerned. So let's take a look through and let's see what the news is for today and just see kind of what the pulse is. I like doing this just to get a sense of what's been going on and what's the focus. I think the market right now is, well, there's a couple things we can do to gauge overall trader and investor sentiment, which I think we should. We'll take a look at the options subreddit. Day trading, I don't think is typically that good. So I don't think that one matters. We'll take a look at options as well in a little bit. But let's just poke through here super fast. This is all bullshit. Most of these articles, they're stuff I don't care about. Corn has been dropping. So that's kind of, let's take a look at corn. Good old corn. Unsung hero, as it were. Oh, it is. It is rallying here. Ooh, kind of like this. Not gonna lie. Bit of a sell-off into the end of the day. This looks interesting to me. I kind of like it to the upside. I'm not going to lie. I don't need a corn position right now, but this is about exactly where I would want to put it on. I can tell you that. Set an alert here. If anything drops below. Keep an eyeball on this bad Larry, shall we? This does look interesting to me here. Okay. So what else we got? Cattle, hogs, cotton, Fed daily. All the Fed speakers are going right now, in case you don't know. So you're going to hear all these different sound bites from all these different Fed people. Just remember, like, really doesn't matter that much. Like, really doesn't matter that much. I would keep that in mind, because I think people will overemphasize each of these prior Fed speakers as if it's some sort of like revolutionary content or details that they're putting out, and it's genuinely not. It like really doesn't matter quite that much. So the Fed speakers will have their, couple things that they're going to say, whatever they're interested in, but I wouldn't overly weight it, is all. So let's get back here, see if there's anything interesting. $35 million bribe. Yo, who got bribed for $35 million? That's what I want to know. And how can I get on that list? No. Come on, man. Let me learn about the $35 million bribe. They're haters, bro. Just let me look. So it looks like Alejandro Toledo. That's who I'm guessing. Yeah. $35 million bribe. I mean, listen, nobody could say he's cheap. That's not a cheap fucking bribe. And he was only governing Peru for 5 years. Psh, that ain't a cheap bribe, dog. Ooh, what's this? Oh, I forgot. It's Bloomberg. I'm not going to be able to read any of this shit. Stupid Bloomberg. I need to get them off my list. Topics. All right, let's see. I'm just going through like what's most popular. This I've been watching pretty closely. This whole Boeing deal. If you guys are watching it, because this looks, oh, well, this is old. This looks interesting coming into earnings, a couple events coupling together here. But there's been right here, a proposal for a 35% wage hike over 4 years. This has to be from the longshoremen that are like, yo, pay us double plus what we make now. And then what I was thinking is that YouTube should actually pay me something for doing a bunch of live streams and shit. And because it's working for these guys, right? They're just going on a strike and they're saying, screw that, yo, pay me. So I might have to strike YouTube I don't know. I feel like I'm in a position to do so. Being such a massive draw for an audience, I think really helps me and my negotiation standpoint, because YouTube would probably look at me and they would think, who is it? This Marquise Brownlee guy? I saw a post about him. This guy right here. This post. I don't know anything about this post. I don't know how accurate this post is. But this guy, right? Like, apparently there's this small YouTuber named Marquise Brownlee or something like that. I don't know. I don't really know anything about him. But he did a review and he messed up a company that was worth 2.9 billion. So I think, like, if there's small YouTubers like that can make that kind of impact. I mean, if you look at our community and my channel, I feel like, well, shit, you know, obviously YouTube would want to sit down with me because of, who knows what I might do in my strike. My strike might be terrible. Tommy says he is the largest tech YouTuber, has a strong following. I know. If you guys can't tell, I'm being completely facetious. This dude is a fucking genius. He's going to be a billionaire. Like, I literally think he's going to be a billionaire. He's absolutely incredible. So yeah. Tommy, I don't know if you watched my video that I did on Citadel, but a couple people, when I did that Citadel video, they were like disgusted that I was sticking up with Ken Griffin. And, you know, that's literally all satire. Reese says, oh, I've never seen him in my life. That's good. That's actually really good to know, though, that my deadpan humor is on point. I have a buddy now. He's one of my good friends from the Marine Corps. And the first couple times I met him, I literally always thought, I was like, dude, this motherfucker's so weird. And then I just realized that he has this complete deadpan style of humor that he doesn't turn off. And I was just too dumb to catch his humor. I wasn't getting his jokes at all. But yeah, the video on Citadel was hilarious because most people got it, but there were a handful of people that were like literally pissed. And I purposely in that video went over the top in terms of, you know, deadpan. Because sometimes, I don't know, I feel like people can try to do like deadpan humor, but they actually are too serious and you can't tell. And then they're like, oh, I can't believe you wouldn't get my joke. And it's like, okay, like you have to play the game a little bit. You have to let on some. But yeah, a couple people in the Citadel, I really thought I went above and beyond on the satire, but there was some people that literally were really pissed off that I was standing for Ken and Citadel. My favorite part, I have to be honest, to continue this rant, one of my favorite parts during that like string of YouTube comments, because I'm still a small YouTuber, so I have the luxury of being able to try to respond to everybody. I try to respond to as many people as I can. I don't get to quite everybody, but I can get to most people. And as I was going through the comments to respond to folks, a couple of those, I literally couldn't help myself. But in the comment, I would just say something like, all I ask is that you keep Ken in your thoughts, please. And I could just imagine when they like got the notification that I responded with that, what their response to that would be. So worth it. But yeah, that video literally got a healthy dose of dislikes, which is fucking hilarious. Oh, so good. So classic. It's so fun. Reese says thoughts and prayers for Ken. That's it. That's all I'm trying to say. He's in a tough spot here. Ken is in a tough spot. He's going to have to figure out how to pay this fine that's going to change his life. Tommy says start a GoFundMe for Ken. That's also kind of funny. So for one of the comments, one of the first comments, I actually said that we needed to start a GoFundMe for Ken to make sure that he was taken care of in this time of need. So Tommy, you're on the same exact vibe. Jimmy says deadpan dry humor or dry wit humor is the deliberate display of emotional neutrality or no emotion. Yeah, exactly. That's the fun part of deadpan humor. But again, like you can't, if you think of deadpan humor as that, and you take that too literally, and you don't leave any breadcrumbs that it's humor, it literally can be undetectable, right? And then it's not actually humor, it's just misleading. So with deadpan humor, I really like it because it's for a more discerning person and like a thoughtful listener, but it does require a little bit of effort to make some of it known so that it's easier to pick up on some of those things. So I'll use things like hyperbole in those instances and stuff like that, just to make it a little more detectable. Because yeah, deadpan stuff is, I think is hilarious. So yeah, anyways, I did want to look at this because I didn't read the, oh, here we go. I love Elon. I love Elon. This is so cool. Because I would have thought this was true. I would have thought this whole thing is true. Thanks, Preston Trout. You fucking. I want to see if he talks about. His review did not in fact kill the company. Yeah, that's so funny. This is so funny. So anyways, I wanted to read this because it was super interesting, but now I realize that it's just complete shit. Damn you, Preston. Why would you do this? Yeah, this is super cool. All right, well, I guess that's dead. I was really curious about that. Damn. Okay. I think we can kill this. Let's get back into the news. Trump plan would make Social Security insolvent in 6 years. Whoa, interesting. Donald Trump's tax. Oh, I see. See, that's the tricky part with titles. This title made me think something completely different. The Republican nominee proposal would also expand Social Security cash shortfall by trillions of dollars and lead to even steeper benefit cuts in the coming years, the group estimated. This starts to become more in line with what I would expect to see. Would accelerate the already fast approaching date when Social Security is projected to run out of money. Isn't that nice? That's been one of the greatest things apart my entire lifetime. See, the cool part about being a millennial is I have been able to pay into Social Security my whole life, and it's gonna run out of money. Like, not quite as I would be getting to, what is Social Security age? Like 62? So I'm not quite there. But I mean, my body age is probably 62, so I feel like I could draw on it, reasonably, but not quite there yet. But it's just really nice to be able to really pay into this thing my whole life. And then the time that I would get even close to being able to touch it, it's going to be gone by then, I imagine. So it's just sick. Really, really big. I love that for me. Tommy says government would find a way to spend more than it takes. Believe. Yeah. The government, listen, if you need to spend a couple dollars, the government's a good place to do it. Jimmy says, do you listen to Scott Galloway? I've never heard of him. No idea who that is. Is it a comedian? Because when you say good bit, I normally think comedian. Sounds like comedian. That Lauren's in the house. Yo, what up, Lauren? Yo, just because NYU professor. Oh, interesting. I would have thought for sure comedian. NYU professor probably doesn't have the same sense of humor, unfortunately. Social Security funds trajectory. Yeah. That Lauren says the cool thing about Gen X is we've been paying our whole lives, but we smoked cigarettes. Never going to see a dime. Genuine question. I don't know anything about that. Is there legitimately some sort of tie between smoking cigarettes and getting Social Security? Is that actually a thing? Or is that like Medicare or something? I can't tell. I obviously can see that you're joking to a degree, but I don't know if there's actually any link there. Oh, just dying. Okay. Well, the smoking equals death. Okay. The reason why I say that is because some of the people that I've known to live a really long time continue to smoke up until their fucking death. Obviously, those are edge cases, but a lot of that is in your genetics. So I'm not saying smoking isn't bad. Obviously, smoking is not good for you, but genetics are the main thing. I thought you were saying that there was some sort of shit specifically about smoking and Social Security. That would have been nuts. But yeah, no, I think the dying before getting Social Security is pretty fair. Let's take a look. I'm actually curious now from a data perspective. What is the average age of death for someone who has smoked cigarettes for at least 10 years? Let's see. Let's see. I'm asking Perplexity to see, okay, there isn't a specific average age of death. I love that for me. Don't really get an answer here. Heavy smokers cut their lifespan by approximately 13 years. You're still going to get Social Security. Heavy smokers, moderate smokers, fewer than 20 cigarettes a day is moderate? Yo, that seems pretty fucking heavy to me. That seems like a lot of cigarettes. I used to buy my mom her cigarettes. That's before you had to be like whatever age to buy cigarettes. But 20 cigarettes seems like a fucking lot. An estimated 23% of consistent heavy smokers never reach the age of 65. That's pretty good odds. Because what age is Social Security? Is it 62? Alexander says 20 is like a full pack. That's what I thought. That seems like a lot of fucking cigarettes to me. A 20-year-old male heavy smoker can expect to live to about 67.7 compared to 76.7. 67? Okay. If it's 67, that kind of sucks because you have 0.7 years to really get into the Social Security. That Lauren says, I cut down to 5-6 a day. You saying I can smoke a pack? That's what this is saying to me. This is saying fucking smoke until your heart's content or your heart's discontent. Who knows what it's going to do to the heart? Doesn't seem great. But quitting smoking can significantly reduce the risk of premature death. Those who quit by age 40 can reduce their excess risk of premature death from cardiovascular disease by 90%. So this is interesting. So there would be it would actually be really interesting to look at like an actuarial table, because you know who has this worked out to a fucking T? Insurance companies. Literally guarantee. Tommy says, look up health spans for Americans, different than lifespan. Oh, yeah, but health span is a really nebulous term as well. For those that don't know what Tommy's talking about, health span is like how healthy you are to enjoy your life, move around freely, take care of basic daily tasks by yourself. And then lifespan is how long you exist, whether or not you're a fucking puddle of bones attached to a machine that breathes for you and eats for you and probably watches TV for you or something like that. Some shit like that. But, so yeah. Very interesting. I wouldn't have guessed some of that. And again, these are broad statistics, right? So there's obviously tons of margin for error all throughout this entire thing, but interesting nonetheless. So this Trump plan seems slightly interesting. Who the fuck is this? I told you guys, if I keep getting these, if that's a political call, I'm literally going to lose my mind. They need to get off my phone. They're like straight up obnoxious. They need to get off my phone. Alexander says we're all going to be cyborgs with a brain. That's exactly it. If you give this long enough time, there's a video game that I like to play called Cyberpunk, and it's like a future-based video game. Long story short, everybody has like these cybernetic attachments. So like if you lose an arm, you get an arm put on. Like we kind of have that now, but it expands to other things like eyeballs and, you know, cool shit. So we're not that far off, I don't think. Now, here's the real question. I'm actually going to ask this in a poll because I'm super, super curious. All right. The question is now live in the chat. Cryogenic freezing. Is it legitimate or is it not? I'm super curious about cryogenic freezing. Not that I would want to do it. I don't think so. But I find the idea of it utterly fascinating because I do believe that we are at a point that the human lifespan, probably not in my lifespan, but I think for people that are just being born now, I would not at all be surprised to start seeing people live until like their 100s, 110s, 120s. I would not be surprised to see that start happening soon. Now, again, whether or not they're just a puddle of bones that's attached to a machine, that I'm not so sure about. But I think the human lifespan is going to start expanding massively. And I think technology is going to be a huge, huge, huge driver for that. Tommy says, freeze me and wake me up every 10 years for a year. I think the problem with that is like, based on how much technology changes, it could take you a year to get used to like the new iPhone equivalent or whatever. You could be spending your fucking day just trying to learn how to use the new technology before they put you back in it as a cube. And then they wake you up in another decade and it's all different again. So, I mean, like, could you imagine? G36 says people already do live until then. Yes, I'm full well aware that people can live past 100. I'm talking like in mass. So, because right now, the G36 says chronic disease is on the rise despite tech improving. Sort of, right? Because you have to remember the average lifespan is increasing. So that creates a bigger net for chronic disease to enter the equation. So if you're dying in your 30s, there's not going to be a ton of chronic disease because you got dead by a woolly mammoth that ran you over. You didn't really have a chance to develop cancer. But as you start to live longer, you do start to introduce more chronic disease, but that doesn't mean you die. It means you have a disease because you're living longer. So yeah, I think that that's another one of those things that you kind of have to look at multifaceted. Okay, so it looks like 65% of people think that you're just a human popsicle if you go into cryogenic freezing. That's interesting. But I mean, I think a lot of these, I think we will see a pretty massive expansion in healthcare provided and healthcare technology. G36 says not just older people. I don't have the stats on that stuff. So again, I don't like, let's take a look at it. Let's explore it together because I don't know the answer. And for stuff like that, people will speak in platitudes, but we won't know, right? Because one of the things is like, what are we detecting now that we weren't detecting before and qualifying as a disease? Like, is psoriasis a disease? We would first have to define what a chronic disease is together. And then I think we should look at it because I'm genuinely curious as well. I don't know the answer. But what I can tell you is that I also cannot help but find, especially with my generation and younger, there's lots of people that have all these psychosocial disorders. I have mixed feelings on that because somehow everybody's fucking depressed with ADHD and all this other shit. And I think that's a tough, like, I'm not going to go into the bucket of whether or not I consider that like a chronic disease. So because again, I think for a lot of people, the idea of like diagnosing a young dude with ADHD is crazy. It's just like being a young boy. You're going to be rambunctious. It's kind of part of the fucking gig. So I like stuff like that I struggle with. So for G36, what chronic diseases are you referencing? You told me that chronic disease is on the rise despite tech improving, also in young people, not just older people. So what chronic disease is increasing in young people that we can point at? And to be clear, I don't disagree with you. I think I can definitely think of probably some diseases that might impact younger people more frequently. Yeah, exactly. I'd rather be skiing is literally pulling up exactly one that I think of. I don't consider obesity a disease. Just put the fucking fork down. So obesity, not a disease. That's a self-imposed thing that somebody does to themselves. It is a disease. It is a body not being at ease. So I agree in a colloquial, like in a use of the term, it's disease, but that's self-imposed entirely. Diabetes, I don't know. Let's see. Is diabetes on the rise in younger people? Let's ask Perplexity. So let's look at rate of diabetes in people under 30, year over year trend. Let's see. Okay. I don't want in the US. I want global. Oh, probably global is going to be tricky to find. Okay, so G36, it looks like here. It looks like you're correct in diabetes. This does look to impact people less than 30, both type 1, type 2. So prevalence into the 10 to the 19-year-old is doubled over the past 2 decades. But again, it's important to keep things in context. The previous was 0.67 cases per 1,000. So still incredibly infrequent. So yes, I would 100% agree that that goes up, but that's still so infrequent that I don't think it's super impactful. Same thing here. So, and this, I mean, this is for the US specifically as well. I think one of the problems with the US is our food is so awful. Our food is so awful. So this doesn't surprise me. Obesity stems from addiction. Addiction is not as simple as just stopping. Yeah, I agree, and then I don't agree at the same time. I understand your point. My dad was an alcoholic. My dad had lots of addictions. My argument with something like that is that if somebody empowers themselves enough, they can and often do overcome addiction, right? My mom, she was addicted to cigarettes for years. She didn't like taper herself off. She literally just opted to cold turkey quit in a day. She just decided to quit. And I'm not saying that's representative for everybody. There's a lot of psychology that goes with it. I think one of the benefits of today is we give a lot of G36. It's possible with the right support, but not everyone has it. Again, I don't fully agree with that because that turns the resolution to addiction external. That means that the ability for somebody to stop an addiction becomes predicated on other people helping them do it. And my position on stuff like that in general is that as an individual, you can. Now, again, that's not the same. I'm not saying it's the same for everything because people that start going down the route of like hard drugs, that's brutal. That's absolutely brutal. G36 says, no, it's both. It's not. Other people can't get you to quit, right? Like I tried to get my dad to quit for a long time and he wouldn't. it is an individual choice. I'm not saying that support doesn't matter. Support helps a ton. And if there is support, that would be great. But I'm just saying that even if there is support as an accelerator or not support, it can still happen without external support. That's what I'm saying. But for some drugs, it's really tricky. Addiction is not a choice. I completely agree. I think addiction, the road to addiction is a choice. Nobody becomes addicted through pure happenstance. So yeah, like the road to addiction is a choice. But once you are addicted, it becomes a physiological need. But again, just because it becomes a physiological need doesn't mean that it can't be overcome. And obesity is, again, it's something that is entirely within somebody's control. They have to go through a process to figure out if it is doable for them or not. But people are entirely capable. And if people empower themselves, they're entirely capable. Again, I think having support is better. The thing about requiring support means that without support, G36 says addiction specialists would disagree with you. Addiction specialists would disagree with me because then they're out of a fucking job. The other thing that you have to realize is that the people that go see an addiction specialist are the people that are the hard quitters. So, yeah, G36 says it's not as simple as you make it sound. Again, it is that simple. It's just like trading. Trading is extremely simple. Simple doesn't equal easy. There's a big gap there. People automatically assign simplicity with ease. Trading is super easy. Buy low, sell high, buy low. Literally, that's it. It is dead ass that simple. But it is very, very difficult to do that very, very simple task. So I'm not suggesting at all that it's easy. I completely agree with you. Again, my dad died of it. My dad died of it in like his 50s. So I spent a lot of time learning about addiction, especially through him. So G36 says, ignorant me. No, I mean, I am ignorant. I'm super ignorant. But I think you and I probably agree a little bit more than we might think. But I believe so much in empowering people. And as soon as we remove the ability for somebody to empower themselves, then we rely on external circumstances. So G36 says you can learn more from the literature. Sure. Again, I'm not pretending like I know everything about addiction. I don't. But I think that it's one of those really tricky things that if you strip the person's autonomy and the ability to do things, then they become reliant on some sort of external system. G36 says, what is the process of empowering someone? Again, you're referring to it as an external process. You can't. For somebody to empower, it's not external empower. This is my point, is that it is an internal function. It's an internal function. So again, for my dad, perfect example. I know for a fact my dad loved us. I know for a fact he loved us. And there was nothing I could do to get him to stop drinking and the other stuff that he did. And I tried everything. I tried going through stuff with my grandparents. I tried explaining to him all these things that I wanted to do with him, right? Like I tried a lot of stuff and none of it worked. So the only point I make there is that there was no amount of external empowerment that was going to change what he was doing. He was doing what he was doing, and it was under his own volition. And again, his own volition at that point was exceedingly tainted by the different chemicals that were in his body and his thought process. But G36 says, you try figuring out why you drank in the first place. Of course. Yeah, we knew all about that stuff. But the background to that stuff is part of the equation. Again, in my opinion, addiction's tricky. Completely agree with you. Addiction is super, super tricky. I'd rather be skiing says you can only help and support. You can't make someone quit, whatever. That's exactly correct. It is always up to the person up until the other. It's always up to the person. Reese says, I drank due to anxiety and other things Eric doesn't believe in. Just kidding. Yeah, I think for stuff like anxiety and things like that, if they're caught early enough, they can be intercepted. If they're not caught early enough and they're allowed to perpetuate, they become problematic. It's actually the same reason why I talk to everybody so much about, again, in trading, the psychology of a winning and losing trade. I do everything I can to dissuade people from caring too much if they have a winning trade. I try as hard as I can to dissuade people from caring too much if they have a losing trade. That's it, because it builds a pattern that becomes more and more difficult to rectify later down the road. And I think that process of trying to develop a more even-keeled approach is probably one of the main things that traders can do to help themselves trade better. And I forgot, we have our handy dandy notebook. I like this thing a lot, by the way. So if we look at like a trader's emotions, and then this is the baseline. This is happy. This is sad. I don't know, their lips are kind of weird, but they're there. And looking at these two emotions, if you have a winning trade, people will let themselves become super happy. And then there's a losing trade, they become super sad. And then if they have a winning trade, they become super happy. And you kind of have this sine wave. If you take a look at what I would consider to be a better approach, would be something more like this. That slowly approximates to this. This is with respect to trading, by the way. This is not, I'm not saying don't experience happiness in your life. I literally am probably one of the most upbeat people ever. Even though I've been laid up for, I literally just passed 12 weeks with my back being fucked up, not being able to do the stuff that I like, I still am happy. And there's a lot of reasons for me to be happy, even though I am still physically nowhere near where I want to be. And it's because of implementing this process right here. It's because I go through this phase of trying to decrease the emotional roller coaster so that fewer things perturb me one way or the other. And that's, again, doesn't mean don't feel emotion. I'm happy all the time. But it does mean to be really thoughtful about how we condition ourselves to respond to things. So if I look at this process of trying to be an effective trader, one of the first things I try to work with people on, and I spend a lot of time, especially in the mentoring program, talking about this exact kind of sine cosine path, is trying to decrease the space here and here so that these all approximate towards a much smaller emotional response to both winning and losing trades. Both winning and losing trades. It's not easy to desensitize to losing trades only and then still being super happy with winning trades. You don't get sunshine without the rain. It's like the same exact kind of thing here. If you're going to have emotional peaks, they're going to apply to all emotional circumstances. So this, I think, is one of the things most people can try to institute sooner rather than later. Reese says Eric would define happiness on an XY axis. That's exactly correct. This is sadness too is also here. But yes, I tend to look at things pragmatically. I found that it serves me better than most of the other alternatives. So it's actually such a hilarious joke, though. It's one of those like joking but not joking, because even down with like the discussion about the addiction stuff, like I'm not even really that interested in getting too far into it, because in order for me to even have a reasonable conversation about something like that, I would have to spend like quite literally dozens of hours educating myself about just current research that exists, because I know that there's current narratives that exist and are pushed widely. Can see those narratives everywhere. If I look up drug addiction, I can see no shortage of recovery centers that then pay for research to be done. That's not coincidental to me. So for me to find like research that I would trust in a large scale, it takes a lot of effort. But the whole idea is trying to have an informed approach to this stuff. But what I can tell you definitively is that people that experience really high highs experience really low lows. That is very, very well studied and documented in terms of emotional responses to things. So at least something to be aware of, I think. I'd rather be skiing says, if you see my trade logs from 2012 onward, you'll see a trader who fell into emotional nonsense. Yeah, it's easy. Reese says your trading ideology isn't dissimilar to sobriety. Be proud of your sobriety, but it ain't over yet. That's exactly correct. And I also believe in control. I believe in self-discipline and self-control. And a lot of people, they dismiss self-discipline and self-control as just, I just don't have that, or whatever excuse there is. And people don't realize that self-control and discipline are learned behaviors that grow over time. And you can enhance your discipline and self-control, or you can diminish your self-control. So, yeah. G36 says, hence why addiction is not solely an individual empowerment thing. Yeah, for sure. I think that's one of the tricky parts with addiction, is that there are a lot of inputs, but I think the main component to it, though, is that even something like addiction, even like, for example, you can put a broad swath of people in the same environment and circumstance, and there will be different responses to it based on all the human and psychological factors. So that highlights, again, how a lot of it comes down to just the individual priming, again, just like it does in trading. There's a reason why something like the disposition effect is as powerful as it is. I was having a conversation not too long ago with somebody about the trades that they were making. And one of the things that we could very, very, very easily identify are a series of execution decisions that are based on a primed learning pattern. And that's the tricky part, is analyzing the learning pattern and then trying to work through it. G36 says that's true. There's just a lot of research on the mechanisms of addictions and sobriety. Sure. I'm positive that there's tons of psychological research on it. I think that kind of thing is really well documented. And I think, again, like there's the research is part of the equation. And I don't think any of us are dismissing any sort of research. But I think research has to be looked at in the aggregate and understood, which, again, I already said at the onset of this, I'm ignorant to it. I don't spend any time researching addiction because I know that I have an addictive personality by far. Even with what I do in trading, even with what I do in working out, I know for a fact that I'm an addict. It's a function of trying to manage it and direct it towards good uses, like doing live streams like this and talking with people and trying to help people learn about trading, for example, right? That's a good place for me to divert energy and effort. And I think addiction is easy for most people to fall into, it just kind of varies in degrees. G36 says, how does one learn self-control if they weren't taught it? It's a great question. I think right now that starts getting into a lot of, brought up in conditioning, because I can tell you, like, as a kid, I wasn't in an environment that self-control was a big thing. My mom was fortunate enough if she could just get my brother and I to school. So she wasn't teaching me self-control, and I didn't have a dad in my life that was like disciplining me to teach me self-control. So my mom definitely taught us self-control through discipline to a degree, but nowhere near the level that I was executing at. So yeah, I think stuff like that gets really, really interesting down to the priming of humans when they're young. But again, I go back to human autonomy and the capability of individuals. Even though I grew up in a household, for example, where my mom was terrible with money, because, to your exact point, G36, that I was introduced to a teacher that cared and introduced me even to the concept of investing. And I've told this story a million times. He didn't teach me how to invest or trade. He didn't fucking trade himself, but he taught me to the concept. And then I went and directed that addictive personality in that direction, and I taught myself. So I had an external injection of information that then sent me down a different path. But the other thing that I find is that a lot of people will not be responsive to external inputs. That is another issue in and of itself. The human psychology and condition is like quite literally fascinating because of how much it varies between people. G36 says 100%, not all are capable of that without learning the tools and having the drive to do so. Yeah. And I mean, here's the other tough reality, right? Like a lot of those people would have fucking died if we didn't have the massive social structure that we have now that props people up. I think people sometimes forget that the world is indifferent. People feel like we deserve certain things. We should be given opportunities. We should be this or that. The world is fucking indifferent. We're all going to die at some point. And even though we have this really beautiful facade that we call civilization, there's one thing I can guarantee you, literally can guarantee you. If food and water started getting really scarce, all of these social programs go away. All of these things that we do to prop up humanity go away immediately as people worry about trying to take care of themselves and fucking survive. So all of us have been so conditioned that exactly what Lauren just said, everyone gets a trophy, everyone's special, everybody's a butterfly, everybody's a beautiful snowflake. And it's not fucking true. Most of us are just another person going through our lives as best as we can. I am nothing special. I literally say that all the time, quite literally say that all the time. And I think people have become so conditioned to a lot of this external support factor that we've removed the necessity for internal drive to do things. And this is why the people that achieve great things are internally driven. There's not some sort of like massive support structure that led people to where they are. A lot of them will have advantages from where they started for sure, but G36 says it's awesome that you got that experience. Many in your position don't. That's where support comes in. Agreed. And again, it's not just support. I think more important than support is the kind of person that's receptive. And because there's lots of people that I can think of that had even more support than I do. I can think of somebody that's very close to me that actually grew up extremely privileged and they're fucking struggling. And I actually think because they've had so much privilege and structure and support that they never learn how to stand on their own. They never had that experience. So now they're struggling to do that because they've had people that have taken care of them too much. I think support is fantastic. Too much support comes to the detriment to the individual's ability to be an individual and execute as an individual. At the end of the day, life is completely indifferent to all of us. That's one of the reasons why I love studying nature so much. And again, it's another beautiful parallel to the markets. The market is completely indifferent to if a trader comes in saying like, oh, I want to make 30% this year. Guess what? The market doesn't give a flying fuck. There's no amount of support that will get somebody to be a successful trader. It's up to internal drive and internal volition that will get somebody there. Now, having what I consider to be one of the best communities, the Outlier community, as a support structure is a massive accelerator. There's no amount of Outlier community that can take somebody that doesn't take it under their own terms, their own volition to try and become a successful trader. There's nothing all of us could do about it. We can help. We can try to point to ideas, information, approach, process, but it's up to the person ultimately, which is really, really fascinating. And I think it's one of the reasons why if I ask a trader unanimously, if I ask a trader, let's do it here. I gotta hide this, and I'm gonna ask a poll. G36 says the issue is the receptiveness is programmed before the individual has a chance by their early experience. Largely agree. It can be learned. Again, that's the thing. Your starting point is only part of your story. Where you go from your starting point does come down to other factors that are under internal control. You can have really shitty starting point and do well. You can have really great starting point and do terribly. You can have parents that do everything right and do awesome or do terribly. I agree with you. There's absolutely a function of the starting point and what kind of roadmap that puts people on in general. Completely agree. But people are not defined by that. People can still operate outside of that. Absolutely. Okay. So the question was, do you think having a trade log is helpful? And we have 15 votes, unanimous, 100% yes. Fascinating part about that is that there will be droves of people that, if I ask that question more broadly, the overwhelming majority would say yes. Yet, if I took a subsequent sample and ask how many of you have a trade log that's actively maintained, that number drops massively. It's a perfect example of receptiveness. People are given tools and concepts that can be tremendously helpful, but then we don't do it. We don't implement it for a bunch of different reasons. G36 says it can be learned later, but it becomes harder. Completely agree. Again, it doesn't matter if it comes harder or easier, right? Like, difficulty is guaranteed. You're going to face difficulty in your life. It's going to come in different flavors. It's going to be scaled to your perception of difficulty, but it's still doable. Doesn't matter if it's difficult or not. If you come from a spot that disadvantaged, do the fucking difficult shit. If it's not that case, then it's easy. It's easy. That's awesome. But I completely agree with you. People that have different advantages or different disadvantages will have different experiences growing and learning, but people still ultimately will have control. So Roaring Clitty says, I feel attacked on the trading log. Tommy says, I do. Vampiritus says, I write a journal a lot, keeps him sane, same as a trading log. Cedric says, my statements for my broker are a pain in the ass, right? So there's difficulty, right? We can have things that are difficult. Elong Song says, how can you listen to Eric every night and not eventually have a trade log? Yeah, that's a great question. I would love to know that, because it's like, maybe it's because I talk about it too much that it just gets filtered out. Maybe that's got to be it. Dayswag says self-sabotage is an internal factor that needs to be worked on, and usually using support helps recognize errors. Of course, that definitely can be useful. I think so. I think, and I mean, I also think of something like self-sabotage. What a high-class problem to have. Like the fact that we can even think about that thing. Now, again, like I just look at humans today, how privileged we are to even deal with these different psychosocial issues. Because again, going back to our Neanderthal and Denisovian brethren, they were worried about fucking staying alive, not getting a bacterial infection and dying. So I think I always seek to keep things in perspective in context, because I don't disagree that those other things suck. And the fact that it's a thing is a thing. But what I can literally guarantee is that regardless of what kind of human innovation and conditions there are, there's always going to be pain. There's always going to be strife. It's never, ever going to go away. It's just going to come in different shapes and forms. So now we have this blow up of ADHD and antisocial disorder and all this other shit. And it used to be some other shit 30 years ago. And it used to be some other shit 30 years before that. It's always going to be the case. And it is, I think, when we look at it from a trading perspective, though, when you think about the process of trading, it is a truly individual state to be in. It is you versus you, fully accountable. You can have support that helps you, but ultimately you are completely responsible for everything that happens. And that Lauren says, ever since I decided I was going to keep a detailed trading log, I haven't traded a single thing. That's hilarious. And that's actually one of the things about trading logs, is to try to come up with something that is reasonable, because again, understanding the function of habits, I talk about this a lot. In the beginning, it's way more important to build the habit than to actually have this really beautiful thing that does everything you could have ever wanted it to do. So say, for example, if I am trading single options, let's say I'm trading directional options. My profit mechanism here is pretty simple, which is price up or down. Either or. Both of them will look slightly different, but let's just take a look at price up, because I think this is more applicable to more people. And then if we look at the profit mechanism characteristics, the PMC characteristics, which is different from the PMS, which is the signals. You guys know these. If we look at the characteristics of price up, and let's say that we're trading something that exhibits drift, which is characterized by week over week or month over month gains. In case anybody was placing an under over bet, I needed to fuck up the stats on that for you guys. So that's why we needed a couple extra Z's. So then we have our profit mechanism signals and all that stuff. And let's just think about what matters here. So if our profit mechanism signal is going to be, let's do overall direction. And then maybe we have a couple indicators that we use for this. So we can use via standard deviation channels. We can use moving averages. And then maybe we use an oscillator like RSI for confirmation, that kind of thing. So if I'm making a trade log, what details matter to me? I'm not going to tell you. You guys have to tell me. What details matter to me if I'm trading this? Because a lot of times people will start with too many things and then they won't do it. That's not very useful. Not super useful to have a trade log that we don't fill in. Cough, Lauren, cough. So you guys tell me, what things are important here? What details would I want to log in this case? Because there's a few things that stick out to me that I think would be very important. And I actually think we can categorize these a little bit into things that matter a lot versus things that matter less a lot. That kind of thing. I'm going to go grab another seltzer water. I'll be right back. We're back at it. Okay, so rate of change, that's one of them. All right, so we'll add that in. I agree. What other stuff? Price targets. Okay. Let's start with one of the simplest things. Let's do this in order of impactful data points that matter the most. So for price up, how do we make money if the stock goes up? So the first data point that you have to have is stock price at entry, stock price at exit. This, first and foremost, at the very core concept, is going to tell you what you need to know. Did this go the correct direction? That's the first thing. Then we can add something else in here that's easy, which is like percent change for the stock, something like that to have a little bit of scale. That's the first thing. Again, when we're making a trade log, it's easy to get overwhelmed with all these random details that don't really matter that much. Like, for example, a detail that doesn't matter that much in this is theta. I should be aware of theta. Theta matters. But once I know the general traits of theta, I don't need to track it. I kind of know how theta is going to behave based on what I do with different options. This is not bad to track. It's not going to break anything. But when we're building a trade log, we have to keep first things first. What are the really important things that we need to track? That's what has to be included up front. That's what matters the most. So price. We probably also want to know our basis. So if you're trading stock, your basis would be whatever the stock entry price is. If you're trading options, this is going to be slightly different. It's going to be the value of your option, something like that. The other thing, if you're trading options, is something like your expiration, which then you can track your DTE. You can also track your DIT by inputting your expiration and your entry date. You can also put your exit date. exit basis. In the very beginning, this is what matters. This is going to tell us a bunch of different things. One of the more important elements that you're going to see from this is whether or not the trade itself, the system itself, made money. But now we have another thing that matters a lot. So from this, we can see what things like our P&L is, average P&L, win rate, loss rate, average win size. All this can be calculated now. These are just the inputs. Average win size, average loss size. All this can be done from this information. So the inputs that you actually need to like physically input in this case would be this, 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 this. And technically not even all of these, but most of them. Because like if you track DTE and DIT, you can then infer your exit date, but just for argument's sake, this is kind of what you would need to start with. So then, again, from an elementary first stage starting point, these are the details you need. You need when did you get in? What did you get in at? You need the basis that you got in at. For options, what the expiration is. You need your exit price, your exit date, and then the basis. Now we can start building onto this to get better information. This is stage one. This is everything that you need to start. Then we can start adding more and more details over time that matter. But we have to be really thoughtful about what we're adding, when we're adding, and why we're adding it. I don't like tracking shit for the sake of tracking it. Now, in the beginning, it's actually great to track as much as you can because you're also going to innately learn the shit that matters and the shit that doesn't matter. Because you're going to find stuff that you're going to track it and you're going to realize you never look at it. Okay, so you don't really need to track that. That's completely up to you. I think in the beginning, the next layer of things to include would be the signal or signals. I would format them so that you can easily search through large data sets. If you do signals via some sort of word block, that's going to be super annoying because you can't filter by a word block. But let's say, for example, one of my signals is stock is greater than 50-day, 50-day MA. This literally can be a Y/N input. Then I can filter this. So then as I'm going through my larger swath of trades, I can say, okay, I'm supposed to trade things that are going up. And in this case, I need to validate if the stock is above the 50-day MA is one of my signals. Then you can filter by it. And then when you go through your trade log and you're like, well, shit, I have a string of losing trades. You might find that a string of those losing trades, you come check this box and it's fucking N. Happens quite a lot. Or if they're big losses, that's another condition that you would find that. How do I know that? Because I did the work. I've done this process and I know what it's going to look like because I did it. You can know what it's look like too. See, what a sales pitch. You can also know what this would look like too if you do the work. So this is the starting steps to this whole thing. And we can do like a basic trade log session. I think that that's actually one of the things I've slated for the pro members for one of our focus topics is building basic trade logs. So we can take elements of that and share that. Maybe we can do that on the Thursday session, and I can open up the Thursday session to everybody. Because I have videos out there about this already, to be clear. This isn't like stuff that I'm keeping for a secret or anything like that. But yeah, I have that as one of my items for you guys. And we didn't have anything slated for 24 Oct, so that can go there. And then for the 22nd, we have Tom's thing that's going to be about overall portfolio management. So we'll grab that. Yeah, cool. So we'll talk about that. Joey says days and trades can give you ROIC, CAGR2 to compare against other trades in the system. Yeah. And that's the really cool part. Again, like if you're really thoughtful about this stuff, it literally, the amount of things that you need to manually input are like, it's really not that much. I thought that hotkey would work. It's really not that much, right? You can start looking at all of these different data points by looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 inputs so far. 8 things you have to type in. Doesn't take that long. So one of the beautiful parts about this in the process of building a trade log, in my opinion, is to keep it something that's simple and palatable so that you'll do it. Very, very powerful. I'd rather be skiing says when and why for both entry and exit. I think those are good. The problem with when and why is when and why should be defined in your trading plan for the specific strategy. And the issue with when and why is, again, like those become word blocks typically for people. And it's very difficult to like synthesize a large block of word blocks. So for example, for this specific thing, playing price up drift, I'm going to have a strategy that's designed to trade price up drift. And in there, it's going to have certain conditions that I'm going to speculate that might be helpful, because if I'm beginning, I don't know what's good and what's not. So maybe I start with something like stock above 50-day MA, something like that, whatever. And that would be what I start with. So then as I'm going through my log and I input yes for stock above 50-day MA for my entry, then in that case, I'm already inherently outlining why I entered the trade because it's built in. That Lawrence says, what are the top 3 signals you look for? It is entirely dependent on the specific opportunity that I'm trying to trade. So I have a couple videos. There's things that apply to everything. So the things that apply to everything would be on like a trade checklist. Key. So here's a trade checklist. And then the other thing is actually the video that I just put out yesterday on the 4-step process to make money with options. The main thing that would apply to everything, Lauren, to not give you like a just it depends answer, because it does depend genuinely. But the 3 signals, it's not 3. The primary signals I would look for are the signals that are most relevant to the profit mechanism. Now, again, there's going to be like things that I'm going to look for that apply to everything. That's for sure. That's a really important thing. So like liquidity, for example, that's something that universally applies to everything that I'm going to trade. It has to be liquid. So that's an example of something that applies to like a much broader arc, but that's not everything that does that. That Lauren says, what's a pro member? Those are people that are in the Patreon. So for the Patreon folks, they have access to like different templates that I make. And then we do like live streams, and they have like a spot in the Discord to chat and collaborate. It's just a little bit of a smaller community, and it's designed to be for kind of like more serious traders, because obviously they're paying a monthly subscription for it. Which for me, I just feed that back into the channel. I'm not like making oodles of bucks. It's stuff that's literally what I pay my video editor with and stuff like that, so I can keep making content. So really, they're just kind of just sponsoring the channel, but I can't take money from somebody without giving them something extra. Otherwise, it just doesn't feel right to me. So I offer them some extra stuff. We do like we do 3 live streams a week: Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday, and then the Thursday one, I'm trying to open it up a little more frequently, just because for the pro members on those kinds of live streams, we tend to be a little bit more technical, talking about like actual management of trades, building and positioning of trades, stuff like that. So I try to open up that Thursday session, a few times a month so that people can get exposure to that. But yeah, that's what the pro side is. That Lauren says, should you have an exit strategy before you enter a trade? I'm guessing yes. Your guess would be correct. Now, with something like an exit strategy, exit strategies can vary. So this is a good example. Right now, well, I actually I'll give you 2 different examples. First example is in NNE. Right now I have long calls in NNE, and we actually talked about it during a live stream not all that long ago. I forgot exactly when, but it is not from too long ago. And in NNE, I'm essentially trading. It was originally based on a breakout thesis. Obviously is morphed a little bit, but that was the original idea. Now, the exit strategy that I have for NNE is much looser than the exit strategy that I'm running in something else. So, for example, this, you can see I'm literally just setting alerts. I just have alerts. I don't have a stop resting. I just have alerts so that I can reevaluate the shape of what's happening when it's happening. A contrasting example was a Russell trade that I had on. And I was trading this up move in the Russell. I can tell you when I gained exposure. So the original entry was on 11 October with a scale in on 14 October with the subsequent scale in on 16 October. So it was a series of entries across here, here, and here. Then I took profits towards the top. I started my exit pattern on the 16th. So I started taking exits above 2,300. And then for the remaining trade, I literally set a good to cancel stop so that I was giving it an opportunity to run up and keep working for me. But I set a resting stop, good to canceled, so that if this started to dip down, then I wouldn't be caught out of the trade. That's the exact thesis behind this. So it's very specific, is really what I'm highlighting here. It's specific to what we're doing in terms of the exit strategy, but an idea of the exit is massively important, I think. Because having an idea of the exit before you get in, it prevents you from having all these different kinds of issues where as you're in the trade and things start moving a little bit and you're not prepared for it, you can prevent doing something like, what was the trade? I think it was a trade called SoFi, if I'm not mistaken, and getting out SoFi on a couple up days. Because SoFi is now continued up and it's actually crossed above 1054, which is pretty cool. That's pretty neat, isn't it? And if I'm not mistaken, there's somebody, I think that certain somebody might be on this very live stream, believe it or not. Yep. It's it is exactly what might be the case here. They might be on this live stream. And the frustrating part here is you can see something then that we get out a little too early because it's moving in our favor, because we didn't make a broader defined plan for what we're trying to do. And then, believe it or not, this does happen. I've seen it happen before, seen it with my own eyes, is we will see instances where we could make more money. Could make more money. Could be done. Joey says that must be so embarrassing. I can only imagine. Like I would personally feel some type of way if I had gone through the process of, taking the risk, putting on a really well-defined trade, having a super logical approach, all those things built in, and then just kind of getting out too early. That would be terrible. That Lawrence says, my long legs help me deal with the pain. That's actually super funny. But honestly, that is kind of the point. Jokes aside, is it prevents us from undergoing something like the disposition effect. So when I look at, again, my trade in NNE, I started entering in back to it on the 16th. And I actually scaled into it on the 17th. And I'm still holding it. And this thing went up 34% today. I took some of the trade down today, but I left some of the trade on, and it will run with these alerts. This trade is set to be another very significant winning position for me. And then APP, guess what? APP, you know me. I've been talking about this APP trade literally from my entry back here on September 11th. When I first got in, it was at $89. That was on 11 September. I've been holding and running this thing, and it literally hit almost 160 today. This was already a six-figure trade back in here. So this trade has been a massive, massive winning position that continues to run. And the way that I'm able to do this is because I have a completely defined approach where the exit is already predetermined before I get into the trade because I've developed a system. So for example, none of this could have happened. A great example of that is there was a losing trade I talked to you guys about recently. What was it? Oh, let me check my log. What was it? No. That was a short, wasn't it? Yeah, that was a short. There was another one that I tried to play to the upside. Remember what it was. What is this? I don't remember what it was. Anyways, there was another breakout style trade that I tried to put on, and it followed a similar setup pattern, but it didn't work. In that instance, it didn't work. So all I mean, it's bothering me that I don't remember what it is. But it followed a similar setup where it had this breakout, got in, and then the breakout failed and it fell back down. I was okay with that exit as well. Like, that's completely okay with me because of having a predefined approach. The hardest part about this whole thing is to make a predefined approach that you believe in and that you trust. I think that's one of the biggest struggles for people because it's very difficult to build something that you trust. The only way that you build something that you trust is if you go through the effort of building something that you fucking trust, which takes a lot of time. But let's actually take a look. I'm curious what's going on here. Qs. Oh yeah, I need to give you guys an update on the TQQ's portfolio. I totally forgot about that because that's something that we're working on all together here as a happy collective. And I'm actually adding another element to this, to the trade. I'm copying and pasting it right now so that it's in the Is this correct? Yeah, that all looks good. Great. And delete those. I don't know why it does that. Delete all of these. Okay, cool. So here's what we have. Oops. One sec. Here's what we have. Oh, that's it. Thank you. Thank you. Reese, you got it. Reese, you're the fucking man. Thank you. Now I can fucking finish that thought. This bastard AFRM. That was it. Thank you. Oh, Reese. Huge bonus points. Reese gets +2 fake internet points. That was driving me fucking batty. I hate it when I can't remember shit like that. Drives me crazy. I can't remember a lot of stuff, and most of the stuff I don't care. But not remembering a trade is the worst. I hate it. Now, the funny thing with AFRM, to be specific though, is that technically it's still in play. I exited the trade early just because I didn't like the way it was moving. But I mean, it's still within my risk tolerance technically for what I had set out for the trade. So I still actually don't hate this to the upside. There still might be a re-entry into this to the upside as I look at this. Hold on, we gotta create another alert here. But the broader point here is that this is a trade that followed a slightly similar setup to APP, and then it fucking failed, and I got out. But the difference is that APP literally is going to be a 6+ figure win. This trade was, I think, less than a 4-figure loss. So it's not even close. And that's by design in terms of the broader system. Thank you very much for that, Reese. I literally couldn't remember the name of it. That was driving me fucking crazy. And now I'm trying to pull up the workbook. And there it is. There you go, buddy. Okay, so this is what we have going on in the leveraged coverage strangle portfolio. I am still trading the coverage strangle and TQQs. I added another short put today. So I put on the 29 Delta 69 strike giggity only because it was 69. That was the only reason. And so far, I have taken in, what is this? It's up to $560 in credit received. I'm at 13,600 in terms of what is cash secured. And right now we're sitting on 200 shares. We're just short one of the 80s. And those expire on 15 Nov. All of these are out in 15 Nov. So that's the latest and greatest on the TQQ's position. And I'll walk you through a little bit of what's going on in here for the leveraged ETF portfolio trade. I'm essentially just riding this strength. Like, that's what it boils down to. Now, one of the things we need to talk about is, how do you think we should manage risk in this trade? Now, again, right now I have $50,000 allocated to it. And the intention is I want us to treat this as an experiment. I'm using real money in the experiment. So I'm going to provide guardrails for me so that I'm not just unnecessarily lighting $50,000 on fire. But I'm not concerned if this draws down 95%. Like, I don't really care. I want it to be more so for a super solid exercise. So we have the trade on. It's working. We need to define, though, how does this work for trade exits? Do we have any ideas, any opinions, any thoughts on how we might want to manage those trade exits? Because depending on what we align on, I'm literally going to type it in to the trade log here, so that then it's going to be part of the process going forward. Now, there's a few things to keep in mind. Frequency of trades is important. This is designed to be a less hands-on trading approach. The second thing is, we have two elements of the trade that offer risk specifically. We have the short puts, And then we have long shares. Those can be managed, and in my opinion, should be managed slightly differently. So let's see what we think. I'd rather be skiing says, for me, it would be at the end of a particular trend. Okay, so how do we define the trend? I'm down to use that, but we need to have defined rules. Defined rules is very, very important here. Tommy says, thoughts, use fast MA cross below slow, like 5 to 150. Okay, so let's just eyeball what that would look like. Let's change this to a 150. And then let's change this to a 5. When does the 5 cross below the 150? It crosses below here. It crosses above here. It crosses below here. And then it's been back above here. So let's take a look at a slightly longer term runway here and see what we think about that. One of the issues I can see with this is it's very, very slow. That's a very, very slow kind of signal. Now, again, Tommy, there's nothing wrong with that, right? You're just throwing an idea out, which is exactly how I want to start this. But actually, I'm going to go into TradingView because TradingView I like a little bit better for this kind of analysis. So let's do TradingView here. And then let's go to TQQQs. Okay. So right now, I think I'm using a MA ribbon because I don't really get to pick too many. So I have a 10, 20, 50, 150. So one of the things, what are these dots? I don't like that. Okay, that's better. So one of the things is using short-term crosses under long-term are going to be a bit slow. Now, if we use short-term crosses under a slightly more midterm, that starts to become a little more effective at reducing drawdown, and you're not actually adding too many additional transactions. So something like this is a 10 and 20. So if we do 10 crossing below the 20, let's see the instances where this happens. So we have 10 not crossing below the 20 here. We have 10 crossing below the 20 here. And then crossing back above here. And again, the reason why I'm doing it this way versus just doing it in Python is because I'm trying to make this accessible. I'm trying to make this something that everybody is easily able to do and leverage for themselves in their own analysis. For me, I would literally just export this into Python and then just run a different series of analysis on the crosses. Now, the other thing that we have to be thoughtful of is for specifically analysis if we use TQQQs or Qs. Because when using leveraged ETFs, it's actually more common to use the non-levered counterpart for your signals. But anyways, let's continue. Is there a way to do like this? How do I do this? I don't know how this works. Moving average 2-line cross. That's great. How do I change the details? Okay, here, let's do this. This is fantastic that they have this built in. This is sick. 10 to 20. I'm just trying to read what this is showing me. It shows me what's deep back testing. Ah, damn it. Here we go. Does it show? Sorry, I don't really know what I'm looking at. I'm trying to figure it out. This looks like days. Properties. Whoa. Commission, order size. Oh, I see. Okay. Margin, recalculate, fill. Okay. Okay. How do you pick? Does it move with this? No. How do you pick the time frame that you want it to do? Here. How do I change this? I want to change you. Yo, you guys know how to use this thing better than me. Help a brother out. Oh, you have to upgrade? The disrespect. The disrespect. Hold on. Do you guys know anybody that works at TradingView? I'll see if I can become an affiliate for them. TradingView. Yo, in case anybody didn't know, it looks like they're hiring. That's cool, huh? All right, let's see. Oh, they have like a whole fuck. All right, I'll deal with that later. Well, anyways. Oh, that's cool that it puts it on the chart though. I like that. So we don't have to worry so much about that. So this looks like from the Genesis. Yeah, okay. So the 10 under 20 seems a little much. And I also am right now primarily managing risk in the strategy because you can see I'm only 56% invested. So the game plan here for me is actually to start rolling these down. If TQQQ starts cratering, roll them down as long as I need to. And then use the residual capital to scale into shares as it starts to show some level of strength. So for me, in terms of downside drawdown reduction, I'm actually not looking to employ any sort of moving average following strategy just yet, although I'm not opposed to it. The reason why I'm not really interested in doing it is because one of the things I'm trying to show is that you can actually do something like this. Oh, how do I turn this thing off now? Is there like a delete button? Damn it. Yo, I literally don't know how to use this thing. Oh, I think you do it up here. There we go. Okay. So the other thing that we can do in here, though, is we can look at longer term signals and see, like, for example, this kind of drop from 82 down to 50. It's a big drop, but depending on how much cash is invested, I'm less concerned about that. Now, the other thing, again, that I would do personally is, how do you, I don't want any of this stuff. I want an oscillator. Maybe minimize that. And then settings. Nope, that's not it. Indicators. And then let's look at like an RSI. There we go. Perfect. And let's fix this. What do we have? 14, the moving average. I like a shorter term moving average, like 10 or 9. And then the RSI itself will be that. The MA will be that. Okay, cool. I don't really care about the Bollinger Bands and shit. Great. So another tool that we can use here is the movement relative for these different pullbacks between the moving averages and something like an RSI. When you add some sort of component that's including an oscillator with a moving average strategy, it increases the efficacy pretty massively. So that's probably what I would do. So like, let's say in this example, right now I was 100% invested. I was very, very highly invested. In that instance, my intention is to use the moving average crossover of some kind. We can track a few different ones along with RSI or another oscillator. CCI is also fine. It doesn't really matter which one, but to use them in conjunction to make sure that I'm at least decreasing risk, de-risking, as things start to show weakness and breakdown. But right now, they're not. Right. And you can see specific elements of moving average relationships that show weakness when things are starting to break down. You can kind of see it happening as it's happening. So that's what I will probably start with as we think more about what we think we want to do. But what we can see in a broad perspective is that these really long-term MAs actually work really, really well in terms of decreasing overall risk on being, ran over to the downside. So the other thing that I think is completely reasonable is using like a 200-day MA as things are collapsing down. You can use that as like a crash insurance that will keep you in most of the time, as you can see here. So doing something as simple as that. There's a couple different routes that are viable here. So that's where we sit right now, though, with the TQQQ's position. Right now, my primary methodology to managing risk is actually going to be via sizing because we're not fully invested yet. Once we're fully invested, it will look a little bit different. But right now, we have a little more flexibility. All right, last thing that I want to take a look at is just some quick scans if this works, because we didn't get a chance to do this yesterday because the scans were not working, which was kind of annoying. So this is looking at, yeah, okay, cool. This is good. So the scans are now working. This is fantastic. So right now I'm looking for stuff that's like showing strength, more or less. That's generally what I care about. And what I do is I filter it by stuff that's positive on a 6-month time frame. So even though that this is showing 88 returns, it's really not. It's kind of just this bucket of returns in here that I care about. So I'm going to poke through these really fast. Nothing. What is this? Isaiah Worldwide. That sounds like the dudes from Step Brother. I forgot the name of the Prestige Worldwide. That's it. Yeah, so this is a missed opportunity. Nothing to be done there. No good. No. This looks decent. A little bit late. No, 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 no. No, 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 no. Okay. I'm going to try a different one. And this is using a pretty tight consolidation. This is using the open and close, which is okay. So let's keep this a little bit tighter still. I'm going to update this script really quick. Oh, I need to close this. I want to update the script just so that I can just filter out the excess stuff that doesn't need to be in there. Okay, we'll let that run. Let's see what's in here that's consolidating. Starting down here. This looks really interesting. And how do the options look leading into earnings? Big put skew. What's when's their earnings? 30th. So now we need to look here. 17. Ooh, call skew, big call skew. And then 15 nov is put skew, but people are playing earnings to the upside. I actually kind of like this. How's its previous earnings looked? It looks good. Yeah, okay. Sold. CEG, or not CEG, CVNA. This will probably be some sort of ratio call diagonal, depending on how liquidity looks. Which isn't too bad. Yeah, this looks fine. Like a 90-day diagonal, something like that. 90-day RCD. So I'm going to add that to my notes. Because I also want to get a ratio diagonal on and a couple other things. But I need to wait for them to rotate over. Now, Lauren says earnings look good for puts, right? No, I wouldn't trade puts in here personally. I would probably favor upside, but I mean, who knows? Nobody knows. Just a way of speculating on different price ranges realistically. Oops. Okay. No. Part, no. This one could be watched. It's a little early. Yeah, this one looks a little early, but this one could be watched. The other interesting thing is real estate's actually doing really bad right now. And the fact that this is even remotely hanging in there is kind of interesting. No, 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 no. No, 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 no. Hmm, maybe. This one we'll see. No, no. Also maybe. My computer is frozen. There it goes. Aha. Okay. All right, next scan. Let's look for take a look for some risk premium next. Yo, what happened to my scratch pad? Oh, that's so annoying. All right. Let's see here. So this is looking for stuff that has, oh, DJT's been all parts. DLSK. Do I have something in here right now? Uh-oh. I hear this tiny little scratching at my door. I wonder. There was like 2 little tiny scratches. Makes me wonder who that could possibly be. Just the littlest scratches. No, this looks okay. Oh, more scratches. It's getting a little more upset. Here he is. So this is post dinner Thor. He's ready to get to work here. He does these little tiny baby scratches. They're like he doesn't scratch hard at all. He does like these little tiny like touches the door, you can hear it. Hello. Dinner. You have a good dinner? Say hello to everybody. They're all here to see you. Say hello. You have anything to say to the people? No? Okay. He's a man of few words. He's very introspective, and he thinks a lot of thoughts. So he will fight, though, as you could tell. Not afraid. But then he'll also do a lot of licking. There's the dude. Little Thor check-in. All right. So this looked okay. And this is like the stuff that we're doing right now is typically what I would be doing more so on like the Patreon Pro live streams. But oh wow, look at that. 704,000 calls against 187,000 puts. That's something, isn't it? So people are very bullish here. 17 Jan 25. Roaring Clitty says, this does beg the question, though. Why not just leave the door cracked? It's because I talk loud. And then my wife in the rest of the house can hear me even more than she already does. And I try to be at least somewhat thoughtful about that. Yeah, this is all massive call skew. All massive call skew. Man. This is nuts. So I was thinking, Rapture says, have you thought about soundproofing the room? Funny story. That entire wall behind the camera here is soundproof tile. It's just a really big room that's very empty, so it echoes a lot. And I talk loud. I've always spoke loud. So those things together lead to, it's not like a perfectly soundproof room. That's one thing whenever we move, I do want to set up like a smaller office because my office is way too big. It's completely unnecessary. And I think having a slightly smaller office that I can like soundproof the entire thing would be really, really sick. So yeah, it's just right now it's a little too much. I kind of like this because I could even do something like a synthetic long, something like this, and to collect a decent credit for it too. Gotta get rid of this other stuff. I kind of like that, running this with like a synthetic long. I'm kind of chill with that. Can do a synthetic long and then could sell some near term. Oops. Some near term out of the money option. And do like 2-to-1 or something like that. Yeah, I don't hate that. We will see, but that's another one to take a look at. All right, gang, I just realized it's about dinner time for me. So I'm hopping off. Tomorrow, we have the Outlier Pro session. Wednesday, meme stock trading. Thursday, pro session. Friday, options trading for beginners. Saturday, GME. Sunday, pro session. Live streams literally every day. If you guys need anything, let me know. Be an Outlier. I will see you all around on the live streams and in the Discord. Take care, guys.